Hi everybody. It has been a long road to Swiss Army knife collection, even just in the years since I put out my first video about the very earnest collection I was building at the time, but really going back to being a little kid and having one of those little, it was a Wenger, the classic size knives that was branded by my dad's company that I had. As a little kid, I was fascinated by these little cool gadgets. And so a big MacGyver fan over the years, and just as I've gotten into doing more and more stuff in adulthood, just trying to find the knife that could step up and meet those needs. And so in the last several years, I have found myself usually defaulting back to my beloved Victorinox Compact. So this is one of the ones, I actually lost two of them, so I bought a couple that were used, and I wouldn't be as concerned about losing them, so I ended up rescaling them and modifying them to an extent I'll show you about in a little bit. But I found myself really happy with this 2-layer knife. But it got me to thinking, could I find a 3-layer unicorn? Something that could still be compact enough that I would actually carry it, and that I wouldn't lose anything that I had in that compact. That's been something that just seems to be really aggravating the deeper you dive into Swiss Army knives as they come from the factory, that there are so many wonderful combinations of tool sets and features, but you'll usually find that one thing that has everything that you want except for one thing, that can be found elsewhere, and you just can't get quite the right combination. So here are some of the ones that I tried out along the way, and I will show you the final solution that I arrived at, and hopefully give a plug for a real master craftsman along the way. But one of the things I came across was a Wenger knife. I think this is the Journeyman. So it's in that smaller 85 millimeter size. It has, that can opener that doesn't have the advantage of a screwdriver, but some people do like that hawkbill style. It also had the unique Wenger pliers, which, are surprisingly tough and robust. They do use the back spring, so they kind of move, as opposed to a Victorinox that has its own spring that's independent of the back spring of the knife. But I just found that was a really cool combination. But what I loved about this was this combination of blades. So we had a serrated main blade, and then, oh gosh, a clip point small blade. That's just a fantastic combination, really precise, and I just think that looks cool as well. So this was a knife I liked, but the way it came, no toothpick, no tweezers, certainly no ability to put any other plus features on, and just a little limited. The main feature here that I was missing was the nail file, and of course scissors as well. That's a really important thing. But given that now those micro multi-tools like the Leatherman Squirt are a lot harder to find, I might give some more thought to SAKs that have the small but very useful plier set. So tried that for a little bit. Like it, still like to take it out and play with it occasionally. So I thought I would spotlight it here. The next step I made was obtaining a knife that for many people is their unicorn, Swiss Army knife. And I remember maybe 8 years ago thinking that 75 or 90 bucks was a lot to pay for a knife, but nowadays looking to see how people try to obtain the Victorinox Yeoman really has made me appreciate that I grabbed one when I did. And this was put out by Swiss Bianco at the time, so it has the addition of the nail file on the back of the hook, like the Victorinox Compact has, as well as plus scales and the updated magnifying glass and the shorter Phillips inline driver. So I just thought this would have everything, every feature of the compact, plus an inline Phillips driver, plus a magnifying glass. I don't need it yet, but I'm sure as I get on with age, I will appreciate that more and more. So I thought this would be the end-all be-all. And again, for a lot of people, it will be. But I just found it was a lot of chonk to put in the pocket. It got really bulky. And I think even back then, when it looked like I could get another one at will, I still was afraid that something would happen to this. And I just was discouraged from carrying it. But ultimately, the size is kind of what came down to being a deciding issue with it. Then I looked at some of the older models that were out there, and you've maybe picked it up by now how much that nail file feature is important to me. So finding some type of model with an abrasive surface, I learned about the Victorinox Trail Guide. So this is a special edition. The YouTuber FX, who is an awesome resource for Victorinox modding and history, spotlighted this one a couple of times, but this is a compact with the addition of a file in the middle. And this is the older style file, which is not as strong. It's apparently prone to chipping, can't cut through quite as much as the modern day stainless steel file can. But it is a lot thinner, and so you do have a thinner knife. And this one I did kind of try in the pocket for a little bit. Not gonna lie, the Marlboro branding is a little discouraging to me as well. For personal reasons, but this is a knife that, again, could fit the needs for a lot of people. And in FX's builds and other ones that you can get, that thicker file enables something to be placed behind it. And so you can see mods that have a file and then an awl on the back, which is a big thing missing from the Compacts tool set. So again, nice to have it, but didn't end up carrying it. Well, as you can see in my previous video and in the lineup so far, I was just very conservative and plain with what types of SAKs I would carry. And then with this one, I figured I would start to get a little more adventurous. So this is the Victorinox Camper. It came in these sapphire scales, and I've since turned it into what I like to call the Glamper, but I got this one with a specific purpose in mind. Now, I live in a wild and wonderful state where you can end up kind of out in nature, you're going on little hikes, pretty short notice, you know, a friend rings you up, like, hey, do you want to meet up here? So you might go right from the job or just from some other place. So nothing that would be very heavy or in depth, but you could be a little isolated, you could be in an area of bad cell reception. And so I kind of kept it in mind with that purpose. And this is, for me, what I think the Victorinox Walker was advertised as being, which I just ultimately feel was too limited to really be able to serve you in an emergency situation. So this was my take on the Victorinox Survival Knife. So this is the tool set of the Spartan, big blade, small blade, bottle opener, can opener, and then having a saw blade in the middle, no back scale tool. And not having a back scale means that there is a spring with a greater recess there, in which I've placed a needle that's wrapped in some braided fishing line and a little bit of orange electrical tape just to kind of protect the saw blade from impact, as well as to keep the thread on to the needle. But I'll show you here what I have been doing to all my 91mm Victorinox knives that I carry. So the first of these features comes from a seller called SAK Mod Parts that you can find on Etsy. And this is a pair of tweezers like you would find in the 111mm Victorinox Garant. So it's got these laser etched ruler markings. You have 30mm in 1mm increments on this side. You have inch long with 1/8 inch increments on the other side. It's also just a little sturdier, more robust than the standard knives. It's available in these various colors. So that was the first mod I made. And then the next was to do what I uploaded in my last YouTube video, which was about opening up the extra channel that now comes on plus scales. So I was able to make enough room to be able to store an unmodified 58mm toothpick, as well as being able to add a pen, and then adding the Firefly with where I was able to move the toothpick to. I now have the ability to do fire making, which pairs great, of course, with the back spine of that saw blade. And then really trying to include a lot of tinder with that. So I used the Helix tinder made by Tortoise Gear, the full length one that goes in the corkscrew, because again, I'm not going to be carrying these on things where I'm going to need an eyeglass screwdriver or those other little mini tools you can get for this. Figured if I say you tripped or something, you know, broke an ankle and you were stuck outside and you couldn't call for help or something, you had to spend the night someplace unexpectedly, your number one concern is going to be about, you know, keeping yourself warm, shielded from the elements. That's also what the sewing needle with the braided fishing line is for, if you had to, you know, repair something quick in your clothing or, again, some type of makeshift shelter. So it's geared towards that. So not only do we have tinder there, I also attached an ExoTac tinder zip lanyard here, and then just changed out the thing on the end. So I tried to get it to match. So got a little more colorful and fluorescent, and I like this knife quite a bit, but it doesn't have scissors, doesn't have a nail file, so it's not in my EDC. So the quest continued until recently. And I came across an Instagram channel called Rebel Restorations and Prototypes. I was seeing all sorts of rare models on that. I was seeing all sorts of cool customizations, and creator on that who was very well engaged with comments and whatnot. And one of the things that kind of got me thinking was when I saw he had created a large version of the walker, I think as he called it, the large lumberjack, which was just a knife, a combo tool like you would find on the Victorinox Compact, and then a saw blade. And he'd also, of course, added the corkscrew, which the Walker didn't have, which I just really think is essential. I mean, if you're going to have a saw blade for using that Firefly, I mean, you really need to have the way to kind of carry tinder. Those just seem to go together for me. I don't know why else you'd carry an 84 millimeter knife with a little saw on it if you weren't looking at some multifunctionality like that. But I said, if only you could just get an awl on the back of the saw blade, then that would really be complete. Again, having a compact knife, way to cut through wood, but also a way to bore through it as well as to whittle with it. And Wes, the creator there, said that that might be possible. So I started thinking if I could actually get him to build what for me would be a unicorn Swiss Army knife. And I was thinking, well, what else could I do if I were to send in a job for him, maybe to get the most out of that time and out of his expertise. So I thought up a couple of other projects for him, kind of let him know what I was thinking, and he gave the okay to send in what I had. In some cases, he added things. But I will show you the first two and then finish off with what I think right now is the unicorn knife for me. But I started with a serrated Spartan, which I'd gotten originally. You think back to that video that that knife I showed earlier, right? That's serrated main blade, and I gotta watch my fingers there. See me Zilch's video on just what this knife can do. But I live by a local bakery, and a lot of times I would get something kind of on the go, get a baguette or something, enjoy it at the office, and just really enjoy having this blade, which makes for an awesome bread knife. But it was limited. And so I knew, though, that I would love having that contrasting blade style then, because we forget about that sometimes. We get really focused on the tool capability of the Swiss Army knife, but the fact is they can also be just great as eating aids, right? So having that and then having this plain blade as a utility one was really appealing to me, but again, didn't have a nail file, didn't have scissors. And so I asked him, could you add that layer? And that is exactly what he did here. So he added the scissors, and he added the nail file that you can only find in the Compact. And so now I have every capability of the Victorinox Compact, plus the addition of a serrated blade, these more capable drivers, and found that it's still pretty pocketable. Now, I had a climber before. This actually was originally a climber, and I liked carrying it, but I did find myself missing the nail file. And as I said before, if I'm gonna up the size and weight of a knife, I don't want to lose fundamental capabilities. That's a concern I've had with the Victorinox Companion, which I think for a lot of people, that's going to be a unicorn 3-layer knife. But I just would miss and couldn't do without the ability to open cans. And one other feature that I really like on the can opener that now that new package opener has taken the place of is being able to use this surface as a very precise prying tool, being able to get very tight and delicate things separated so you can open them up. I think that's an awesome capability of the can opener that I just couldn't be without in a knife that's otherwise built on that platform. Do love how they added the nail file to the Companion, but for me, this works for me just fine. And when I do the math on what features I'd be giving up for that, this is what honestly just really ticks just about all my boxes and gave me everything I wanted in one knife, with the addition of, and I haven't replaced these scales yet that were on it when it was a serrated Spartan. I'm going to be doing that soon, though. I'm going to be getting blue scales on that. So as you can see here, I've dubbed this the Serrated Climber Plus, which it will be in the end. So maybe you'll see this with its new skin in just a little bit. So I said this started out as a climber. I knew again that I wanted to have a nail file on it. I had some parts that I got from that SAK Mod Parts site on Etsy that I mentioned earlier, and thinking maybe I would do that modification on a knife someday myself, since that center pivot is just a piece of peen brass, and some people will start with just those back layer tools, like adding a Phillips, replacing that with the corkscrew on a compact is what a lot of people will do for a relatively easy mod. At least that's how it seems. I don't know how it actually is when you get to tearing the knife apart. But I asked Wes, like, okay, you've got a climber here, but, you know, while you're at it, I'd like to swap out that hook and, you know, just can you go ahead and replace the corkscrew with a Phillips and turn it into basically a super tinker with that little bit of a dash of the compact's versatility. And what I was thinking with that, I don't have too many 91 millimeter knives that have this backside Phillips, or as FX calls it, the devil's tool. It's true that it doesn't have a ton of versatility, and honestly, I would be wary of using it very much because, you know, Phillips drivers can get chewed up pretty easily. But I did want to try it for the ergonomics, because it's definitely a lot smoother there compared to something that you would have, you know, with the corkscrew. You have a hot spot, for if you're using, you know, the blade or whatever in your hand, but you're also increasing the maximum dimensions quite a bit with that. So I just thought this as an alternative would be kind of neat. So I've actually had this in the pocket quite a bit. I let Wes know that I was going to be keeping the front scale. He asks you about that, about what type of scales you're planning to put on it. For that serrated Spartan, I wasn't quite sure what color I wanted it. I knew it would also be something I would modify a little bit. And for this one, I said I would ultimately put in a plus scale on the back. So he secured this one. Really nice. He doesn't, from what I can see or gather, use glue or anything, but it's on there really firm. This one, he said he left pretty loose, so it'll easily pop off and I can swap it out. But I've been carrying this one and have liked it quite a bit. I think it will rotate in regularly. I went for a bit of a NASA color scheme. Saw a YouTuber recently who did a climber white knife like this and really turned it into a medical knife with the same kind of basic color scheme. Really cool. He made it like a very flat blade for kind of rescue purposes. And then he turned the small blade into a tracheotomy blade. I can't believe Victorinox has actually used that terminology, but I learned that in a video recently about the Victorinox Rover, which has that in the 58 millimeter version. But that was a beautiful knife, and that's a cool video. I'll try to remember to include a link to that in the description. But yeah, this is my Super Tinker with just a little bit of extra capability, and is going to get that tricked out plus scale on the back soon. So we come to the grand finale. So I mentioned that when I got this compact, it was in a pair of them that were used. And so this one was in pretty good internal shape. It's had some pocket wear since I changed the scales out on it. But you can see those, again, those various modifications. Added the fourth slot, opened that up at the end, used a toothpick for a 58 millimeter to fit in there without a whole lot of extra modification. One other thing, when you've got the hook on the back, I just add that 3 millimeter magnet as well to have that for an impromptu little pickup tool. As for the other one, it was originally red, but it was very beat up. The main blade was really worn and curved a little bit, but it did have just one of the most amazing pair of scissors. I don't know. There's something about this particular pair that has such a nice spring and bounce back on it. I haven't found this on any other knife, so I was really eager to get that, you know, back into a knife that I had full confidence in. So I asked Wes, going back to my question I posed to him on Instagram, could you take this compact and could you add a saw? So he said he could do that. So now what we have is a Victorinox compact with a saw blade, and we have a back scale all. So you have what is basically here a Huntsman compact, or a compact Huntsman, or maybe we would call this something new and altogether. You know, we've got the Huntsman, the Trail Guide, maybe this could be the Trapper, I don't know. But I have just loved this one. And with that saw blade layer in the middle, it just feels a little bit thinner than even the Climber and Super Tinker I showed you earlier. I don't think this is really going to show up super well here, but I can feel just a little bit of difference in how thick they are in my hand and how big they are in the pocket. And I have just loved this, and so his work is just very well done. We'll highlight here how the precision and tolerances and the reproducibility factor, as Vine Climber called it recently, are are important because you can see the awl was made to go on the back of that opener layer, the Canon bottle opener, which is not on here. You know, I just have the combo tool, which for me works pretty fine. Anytime I've carried a compact, I've never really felt like I needed the other tools, but I'm also just careful to not overuse it. But you can see a little bit of it, that this back tool is a little wider than the spring for the saw. So it's smushed a little bit here, and you can kind of see it on the front end a little bit. And none of this is showing up quite as prominently as I thought it might, but it's just a little bit smushed in one part. But honestly, I can't really feel that in the hand, and I've decided this is definitely going to be a user knife that I carry a lot, you know, put through its paces. And I just think this is about the ultimate for me in terms of a knife that I can actually carry and actually get a lot of use out of. So basically, I'll carry that one. I will rotate in this Super Tinker. I think once I get the scales all finished up on the serrated climber, I'll do that. And, you know, just on days where I want to carry something a little thinner, or, you know, this goes with what I'm wearing, I'll probably go back to this compact. But all of these now are at a point where I will make the room for them. So just wanted to do a little tribute to 3-layer Victorinox knives and the ones that ultimately won my heart. And if the perfect knife doesn't exist, you can go about willing it into existence. And there are some very talented people who can do that, and who you can, I think, just make some great connections with if you haven't yet developed those skills. So it's got me curious, and maybe that'll be the next part of my Victorinox journey. All right, thanks a lot for watching. I'd be eager to hear your comments about what the dream 3-layer knife, or less or more, is for you, and have a wonderful day.